Okay, welcome to Live and Be Great. I'm your host, Latonya McDonald. Today we are diving into a topic that I would say touches every single one of us at some point in our life, which is grief, loss, and healing after losing a loved one. Whether it's navigating survivor's guilt, understanding healthy, I would say, healthy versus unhealthy grief, right? Because there's a difference. Or figuring out how to support a grieving parent, spouse, or child. This conversation will give you real tools and real hope. My guest today is Marcia Earhart, a grief coach and nonprofit leader who helps people process loss with honesty and compassion. Together, we'll be unpacking what it means to walk through grief in a way that's transformative, not destructive. Okay, so welcome, Marcia. Say hello to everybody.
Well, thank you, Latanya. Hello, everybody. I'm so glad that Latanya is choosing this topic because it is seen as a taboo topic, and we need to have these real conversations and know that every single one of us are going to grieve many things within this lifetime. And so we need to learn how to be present for one another and to be able to be accessible and to have those safe people accessible to
Mhm.
us.
Right, exactly. So let's dive right in. Marsha, one of the questions I hear often in my coaching practice is how do I support someone through grief without damaging our relationship? In psychology, we talk about boundaries in grief, the balance between showing up and overstepping. From your perspective, how do we navigate that balance?
Well, first of all, I think that context is everything. How close are you to the person? Secondly, have you been invited into their grief journey? Just
Hmm.
because you are a friend or a family member does not mean you have been invited. And individual who is grieving gets to choose who gets to come in that inner circle. So
Right.
first of all, don't be offended if you're not. Second of all, here's some things you can do, even if you are up close or at a distance. You can be sensitive with your words, and that is extremely important. That when you're having a conversation with someone, instead of saying, "How are you?" ask them, on a scale of 1 to 5, where are you today? How can I minister to you? See, that doesn't that I'm not assuming that I'm
Mhm.
part of this journey, but I can ask those questions and I can see, what are your needs today? How can I minister to you? And just
Mhm.
asking those questions. That's a couple of things. Next, send thoughtful notes and a text or an email to show you're thinking of them. Not bombarding them, but just if you think of them, hey, I was thinking of you today, wanted to send you a little bit of encouragement, have a little smiling emoji or a little heart emoji or a little, giving a hug emoji. Um, you know, and the next way to be present in that space without overstepping is to remember the anniversary dates, the occasions that are coming up.
Mm,
This isn't going to take a lot from you, but it takes you being intentional to send maybe either a note or a call. I love it when people call me on my son's birthday. I
mhm.
love it when they call me on the day that he went home. I loved the letters and the cards and the text and the little notes that I received that first month, the 6th month. I had someone who sent me a card every single month that first year, and I cannot tell you how ministering that was to me.
Mm,
So they're little things. I mean, for you, the griever, that's a big thing, but for the person doing it, they don't realize that that little thing is so much weight in
mhm.
someone who's hurting, someone who's really struggling through that pain. So, I mean, we wanna be intentional and do it with a heart. of where we're really present in what we're saying, not just doing it. So if you can only send something once, that's great, but let it be expressive with intentionality that, hey, I am here for you. Speaking the loved
Mhm.
one's name.
Yeah.
There's so many people that I've lived this now. They really do not want to say the name. They think it's going to trigger something. The reality is
Mhm.
it's not going to trigger anything. They think of that person all the time. They're having memories. They're walking the daily experience. But the way that you can bring it up is, hey, I'd love to hear a great memory or story about da da da. Or
Yeah.
what was one of your favorite times that you spent with your husband or your sister? And if you're comfortable, I'd love hearing it. If not, save it for another time. I'll wait for you to be comfortable with that. But you said their name. Or you could
Mhm.
just say, and I had someone do this, oh my goodness, I was thinking of Sterling and I just so miss just his energy and his passion. And I'm just thinking of him today. I love that. So it doesn't even have to be a question. It can just be, I'm thinking of, which so resonates with the person grieving. And
Mhm.
then I think, too, just to offer practical things like going grocery shopping, doing some errands for them, doing some cleaning and babysitting.
Mhm.
That's how we can enter someone's space without being over the boundaries. Giving
Mhm.
them gift cards because gift cards, they may not want to be going out. Also, be encouraging to take gentle breaks. I had someone who called me and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm sitting here." And she said, "I need you to get ready. I've got to go to Target and I'm coming to get you." And to be honest with you, it was the best thing. I know that sounds crazy, but we just went and did a normal thing together. We walked Target together, girl. And I
Yeah.
am telling you, it resonated with me because it was taking me into something was normal. And we didn't talk about anything. We just went to Target and we did our thing. And I just thanked her. I said, "Thank you for being here." It was a low pressure setting and an outing. And that's one thing that people who are entering that space, be careful. Don't invite them to a big party. People
Mm.
grieving are not wanting to come into new places because here's the question.
Mhm.
Well, how are you doing? Well, what's going on in your life? Especially if
Yeah.
they don't know. Well, I mean, do you have any children? Are you married? Oh, my word. These are questions that for someone who's had that
Mhm.
staying offer, how many siblings do you have?
Yeah.
And they're dealing with that. So to be sensitive to the environment that they're in right now and to
Mhm.
make sure that when you're asking them to come into an environment, it's not invasive. That makes
Okay,
sense?
I love that. Like that resonates with me so much. What you said there is very, very helpful, like getting into the mind because you don't know what to say, you don't know what to do, but you want to support,
Yes.
right? And you want to meet them where they are at. And oftentimes in my coaching with families and couples, supporting without trying to fix,
Yes.
right? Like that's a
Yes.
big thing. Like people think like they have to, I guess, try to find some way to fix what this person is going through or find the right word or the right phrase thing to say to get them out of it. And, based off of what you're saying, what I'm hearing, if I'm understanding, the simple way is just to be there,
It
right?
is. It's to
Just
be there, and
to
it's to
be a
be there
support, be
without
present.
judgment. Yes, without
Mhm.
judgment. And I
Mhm.
love that.
Mhm.
We have to listen deeply.
Yes.
We're not a society that listens too deeply. We got to
Mhm.
learn to be an attentive listener. And when you're listening to them, you don't need to give a response to them, but you can head nod, you can pat their hand. They know you're present. They
Mhm.
need for you to be able to sit in silence with them too.
Yes. So some
Silence is
mhm.
important. It's very
Right.
important. And quite often other people feel uncomfortable with silence.
Mhm.
Silence is a good thing. It's healing.
Yep.
And we don't need to just fill it in because we're feeling an awkwardness. And a griever needs
Mhm.
someone who can sit with them just in that space, unjudging, without fixing, without platitudes. They don't need platitudes. Do
Mhm.
not say a platitude to a griever because what that does is it shuts the griever down and it tells them that their grief is it's not important to give them that space.
Right.
because this platitude should fix it. It should
Mhm.
be it should be the balm over it. Well, that isn't the balm over it. It isn't. If anything, it causes a deeper wound. When
Right.
I work with people who are grieving, one of the things they hate is when people speak a platitude to them or when people say, I understand what you're going through. Do not say that to anybody. First of all, even with the losses that I've had, I do not tell my people I understand what they're going through.
Oh.
What I say is,
Mhm.
I know you're hurting and I want to be present with you right now.
Okay.
Because what happens when I say I understand,
Yeah.
that right there, first of all, I don't understand the emotions they're feeling because I'm not
Mhm.
them. I don't
Mhm.
understand how this has impacted them within their mind, their soul, and their spirit. But I'm willing to understand. I'm not comparing my grief and aligning it with their grief. I'm not saying because I've lost a child, I know what everyone who's lost a child feels like. No, I don't. Because
Mhm.
everybody is unique in their expression and in the impact of what something happens. What I can feel is empathetic. What I can show is compassion. And so I feel like if we can kind of shift in our culture and we can shift some of those things that we have grown up thinking was okay, that we've kind of modeled, then we start really entering the space of healing. Wouldn't you agree, Latanya?
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
I would agree. If we got more comfortable in that space, in that silence, in that just holding space and not trying to fix, like your intention, I think your intention will already be understood if you're just there, right? Just
right.
there to hold the space, talk about whatever they would like to talk about at their pace. But yeah, this is definitely, I want to say, one of the most difficult conversations on how to show up, right, for somebody that is grieving, because we just go to the, I'm sorry for your loss, or like you said, I understand. And I love how you say that even though you've been through a lot of grief, based off of your story, you still are not that person. There's so many
No,
things that they could be thinking about. They could be thinking about the bills, right? How they're going to survive with the person that just,
that's
is
right.
not there any longer. They could be thinking about, future dreams that they had privately with that person that we have
That's
no
right.
idea about, that they're grieving with. So it just makes sense to, if you really want to support somebody, to listen to the things that Marsha is saying. Like, it would really, really, really be beneficial. Especially, I'm so glad I caught her right before we get into the holidays, because I know it will be hard for a lot of people.
Yes.
So, Marsha, I want you to share, if you're comfortable with, share some of your stories about loss when it comes to your own life with the audience, so they kind of know where you're coming from.
Well, I had quite a bit of loss in my earlier years. I had
Mhm.
17 tragic losses by the time I was 18. And
Mm.
so I do believe that the Lord kind of prepares us for our calling in life. And however, at in 2014, we lost our oldest son in a tragic car accident. He was 21 years old in law school and he passed instantly. So our everything in that moment, I died to who I was in that place. And I'm never
Mm.
going to be that person again. And I don't want to be. I need your
Mhm.
audience to know I'm not trying to be because my son's not here. I don't want to be that person without him. I want to be the new expression of me
Right.
because that expression of who I was contained with him and my
Mhm.
family then. So, as a family, we died. We experienced the loss of dreams, the loss of presence, the loss of his friends, his community over time. We,
Mm.
I mean, all of that. I mean,
Yeah.
all that loss produces, but in that, we kept choosing to look at in this loss, what is it that is being birthed?
Mm.
Because I think in any time there is something that dies, there is something that is being birthed. Because I think in any time there is something that dies, there is something that is being birthed. Because I think in any time there is something that dies, there is something that is being birthed. Because I think in any time there is something that dies, there is something that is being birthed. Because I think in any time there is something that dies, If the seeds fall back to the ground, which they did, then we were looking at what's going to grow from this. I don't want to miss it. But we did grieve. We actually went into that place of
Mhm.
allowing ourselves, and grievers have to give themselves permission to grieve. Most grievers do not because they have this external pressure that they're to grieve a certain way.
Yep.
Therefore, they don't say, I'm giving myself permission to grieve.
Mm.
And if they don't give themselves permission to grieve, Latanya, then what happens is it goes into the soul and the body keeps the score and they start having physical problems,
Mhm. Mhm.
emotional problems, mental problems.
Yeah.
So 97% of our mental health issues, it's due to
Mhm.
unresolved grief. I need people to understand that.
Yeah.
So as we were in the process of healing, our children lost not just their brother, but they lost their best friend, their hero. So the losses were innumerable in our
Yeah.
family. And it wasn't just my loss. My husband lost something different than I did. My children lost something different than I did. And then we lost common things together. So we sat down and discussed those things
Mhm.
because it's important. Because what caused healing for me was triggering to my husband.
Right.
So we had to discuss how can I heal without triggering you in this aspect. I'll give an example, a picture. My son's picture was healing to me and my daughter. It was triggering to my son who was at home and my husband. And so we had to figure out how can we have a picture that would bring healing to us but not evoke trauma. So we found a space that we
Mhm.
could do that. And the reason why is because I knew the tools, I had the resources to be able to do that. Everybody doesn't. That's why we help them with this process.
Right.
So as we were in the process of healing, 2019, our second son at 27 was murdered with his girlfriend from an
Mhm.
estranged boyfriend from over a year and a half who flew in from out of state and murdered them in Florida.
Mm.
And so we started all over again. We died again.
Yeah.
We all died again. And then we had to die to the fact we wouldn't be able to be the grandparents to his children. We don't get
Mhm.
to see them. We wouldn't be able to a lot of dreams again. Once again, we had to grieve those losses. But
Right.
again, look at where's new life being birthed in this. And if we're just looking at the loss itself, what that does, Latanya, is it
Mhm.
produces a spirit of death in us.
Right.
And then we start living from that tree of death. And that is not where we want to go. So, what we do is we allow for that process to be okay, I'm grieving this, but I want to live from the spirit, from the tree of life, so that life is flourishing within me, that the spirit of life is giving birth to the spirit of life in me. So, for us, the journey has been very real, it's
Yeah.
been palpable, and we have experienced a lot of grief in a multitude of ways. And so that's why I said, even though we've grieved, I don't
Mhm.
pretend to understand where everybody's coming from. A while ago, when you said something, it made me think many people that come to us, there's unresolved conflict that they're grieving from a loved one that passed.
Yeah.
It never was resolved. And they're trying to not just grieve that the loss of the person, but now they're trying to come to some sense of understanding, how do I live with this unresolvedness that we never got to have closure? And so that's part of someone's grief journey, and it becomes complex. We just can't wrap grief up and go, it all looks the same and we're all going to walk this. It's not.
Right.
So that's why we have to leave a wide open space, and we
Mhm.
can't expect people to do it from the way we did it,
Yeah.
because then we're putting an expectation that's not entering their space. So
Mhm.
our own grief has taught us that we have to unpack the thorns in order to appreciate each rose petal in that rose, and that the thorns actually serve a purpose because we would not have the rose without those thorns. And so that's the beauty and the brokenness, I
Right.
believe, of what we experience and what our family has walked through.
Mm. Yeah. Like thank you for being so open and honest, about what you've gone through. And I have always been someone that believed that your pain has purpose, right?
Yeah.
It may not be, you may not understand why you have gone through it, but the people who have gone through a lot, I think those people are God's strongest soldiers, And even if you do not believe in a higher power, I truly believe that one day you will meet the person that you went through that particular event for,
Mm.
right?
I
And they're
believe
going to
that.
need to see you standing. They're going to need to see you thriving and flourishing in order to know that there is a way out. There's a light
Yeah.
outside of the darkness that they feel, right? And then you all are hearing Marsha's story, and I think we all know at least one person in our life, maybe more, that for some reason we see there's a lot of death around them. I'll just say it,
Mhm.
right? And those people, I think it's beautiful that we started this talking about the things that you do like when you talked about the Target situation, with your friend. It doesn't matter because even with those people, sometimes, okay, one big death, like their mother, their father, or a child, right? But when they have multiples, you're like, okay, well, do they still like the same thing? Do I still say the same thing? You listening to somebody who's one of those strong soldiers, right? That have experienced it, but still telling you all to still show up, hold space. Don't try to knock the person out of the grief. Let them feel it, right? Even, it maybe the person may or may not be comfortable with you saying, well, I know you've gone through so much, maybe just be there. Just be quiet, right? Ask them what they need, like Marcia said, and show up for them. And I want to, of course, hold myself accountable too, because I'm going to that part about how you kind of lost the community that was surrounded by your son and your children that you lost. They kind of, fell through the cracks as well, right? Which had to be hurtful. With my own, personal story, and we'll segue into the next portion of the podcast. I lost a friend, and I want to say, about 7 years old, 6 or 7 years old, and this was the only friend that my mom would let me play with.
Mm.
And her name was Tiffany. And Tiffany used to come and visit, and if she needed food or they were hungry or anything like that, like right next door, my mom would let her come in the gate. And then I think after a while of seeing our friendship blossom, she would let me walk next door. So I remember waking up one night and running downstairs and saying, Mom, I hear Tiffany screaming. And she's like, how could you hear that? Like, she's next door. And when my mom looked outside, the fire truck was outside of the house, outside of Tiffany's house. And, as a kid, you're like, oh, okay, well, now she can come live with me. You're not thinking that a child would die or anybody would die. Like, your mind doesn't go there as a child. So, getting up the next morning, my dad's taking me to school, and one of the people in our neighbors stops us and says, did you hear about what happened next door? And she's like, Tiffany, she didn't make it. And all I could do is look at my dad and say, like, do I still have to go to school? Because I didn't know, like, I'm in shock. Like, I don't, what, kids die? What do you mean? He ended up having to pick me up from school anyways, because I was distraught. But when we got to the funeral, I couldn't cry. I felt like I had to be strong, and it was a closed casket and everything. And during that time, because we were, heavy in the church, I'm thinking everybody's telling me, oh, she's in heaven now. And I'm like, I want to go too. So my
Absolutely.
parents had no idea that I was suicidal.
Yep.
I would get on the roof and walk across the ledge and try to figure out which part of the roof I would jump off so I could go be with Tiffany, right? So it's very, very important that people do understand that grief hits everybody involved, right? And if you're not having the conversations, if you're not checking in with everybody that's
Yes,
involved,
ma'am.
you like, I could have been out of here, right? So I
Yes.
want to ask you, Marcia, about talking to parents, talking to children about death. Like, where do they even start? And when should they start?
They should start very early. We did very much had a similar situation than you. Mine was 3.5.
Mm,
My great-grandmother passed, and I kept having a recurring dream in college and went
mhm,
home and told my mother that my dad was holding me, and I was looking at my great-grandmother in a casket. And I looked at dad and said, "Where is she?" And he said, "She's with Jesus." And I said, "Then I want to go be with her and Jesus."
mm,
And my mom said that actually happened. And
mm,
it put a fear of death in me that something was going to happen to my parents. For me, it went the other way. I now was fearful they were going to die and I wasn't going to be able to see them again because they were going with Jesus. Are you with me?
mhm,
So
mhm,
what what I learned, now my parents were really good because I kept asking lots of questions. They actually took me to a counselor who explained to me about
mhm,
death, and it was a very beautiful way that it was handled and told
mm,
me where Jesus was, all of that. It was, I mean, and this was actually a funeral home, believe it or not. This is how
mm,
they gave counsel then. And
right.
so I came to a better understanding, but having worked in this, but also having lived it with my own children, we did a check-in daily on how everyone was doing. And I can tell your viewers, even my son, who was 12, ended up becoming suicidal. He went into a state of anxiety and depression around 16 years old
Mhm,
because of the loss of his first brother, because we hadn't entered the second loss yet. And
mm,
you have to have these ongoing conversations. And let me tell you how to explain it to a young child. This is what we did. We took a glove and put it on our hand, and we
mhm,
said, in life, everyone's going to die. And
mhm,
so the outer glove represents what we see here in each other, the outer body. And so what happened is this person died, and I took the glove off, and the glove laid still, and I said, "The person's spirit has left, but their physical body is there, but they no longer exist. They've
mm,
left, they've gone."
mhm,
And
right.
we explain that. Now, we're faith believers, so we explain that as
Mhm,
our faith that, those who believe in Jesus, they've gone to be with the Lord. Those who don't, we explained it. So
mhm,
again, based on where people are, that's an easy segue because the reality is they can see, oh, I see the glove, but the body's okay, the spirit left. Okay, but
mhm,
that
mhm,
because we're just all housed in these temporal shells. And that's what we said. So it gave our kids context very early on where they were not fearful of, they understood. And then
right.
you talk about, now, I think you have to know each of your children as to
Mhm,
whether they should go to a service on and whether they should see a body.
mm,
We did not, one of my oldest, when my father passed, my youngest would have been 5. He did
yeah,
not go to the service. The Holy Spirit told me he was not to go. And do you know, to this
mhm,
day, he thanks me for that?
mm,
Because
mm,
he said, I don't think I could, because I felt like based on who he was, one, he did not need to go. Now, my dad, we did not do an open casket. We had an open casket for certain family members and for
mhm,
an hour somewhere. I wasn't doing that.
mm,
And my oldest son wanted to go and see my dad, and he and my husband did. The
mhm,
rest of
mhm,
my children that had opted out, but the youngest was not even at the service. So, as
mm,
parents, you should not require your children because when you
yeah,
require them, that also can cause trauma. That doesn't mean that
mhm,
they're in denial of the fact that someone passed and it's not, but we need to be careful what we enter that space in. I actually was forced to go to my grandfather's at 16 years old to his service,
mhm,
and I did not want to see him. I'd made it very clear. And I
mhm,
did not even want to go. They were having a wake. That's what they used to call it. They had a wake.
yeah, yeah,
I
right,
did not
mhm,
want to go. My dad said I had to go. And I am
mm,
telling you, it shook me to my core for many years
mhm,
because someone tapped on me and I turned around and there was my grandfather in the casket. And girl, I lost it. So I had to deal with that. So what I'm saying is, as parents, be sensitive because each of your children are different children
Mm.
and how they're going to interact with grief is going to be different. So you want to be prepared and you want to ask the question, okay, today when we went to that, tell me what your thoughts were. Was there anything to you that really made you uncomfortable? See, we've got to ask the hard questions, just not like, well, how was that for you? It was fine.
Right.
We need to ask those questions. Okay, and when they tell you, "Well, this made me uncomfortable," what about that made you uncomfortable, honey?
Mhm.
Moving forward, would you think it would be better for you not to attend a service like that? Because I think this is important that we dialogue and we unpack this. How can we help you have healing right now based on the experience that you've had? Now we're being attentive to the fact that we've had an exposure to something that was uncomfortable. You're
Mhm.
validating, you're affirming to your child these things. So the open communication from early on is very important so that your children know I can bring any question, anything that I'm uncomfortable about to my mom and dad or whoever's in the house as a parent, but I can bring it to them.
Right.
Whether it's my grandmother, because some people live with their so
Mhm.
whoever
Mhm.
that is, we need to have that open. So I want to encourage those who are raising children, it's never too early because tragedies are happening continually. And because of the media and our devices that the kids are exposed to,
Yeah.
even they're looking at devices, they're going to see death.
Yes.
So let's not let that happen on your social media where now you're having to backtrack and catch them up. Be proactive. Our desire was to be proactive and be the first ones out the gate to educate, help prepare our children before those experiences.
Mm.
Then you're better equipped
Yeah.
when you're walking in that.
Mhm.
So, I mean, again, there's a book called Kitchen Soup or Soup.
Mhm.
Yep. Best book for children. I encourage all parents to get it because it's
Mhm.
talking about how you're building the soup and it's about grief. And it's a
Right.
beautiful book about grief. So have those resources that they see that living and death are normal parts of life. That
Exactly.
death is not the exception because what happens when a child doesn't understand that death is the normal part of life is all of a sudden it's scary. And that's where trauma starts embedding itself because it didn't have that as a resource. It didn't understand, I'm going to die too. People
Mhm.
around me are going to die, but I don't need to be fearful of that. This is a part of life. If they have a pet and the pet dies, really great time to process and help them understand the death process and to grieve and to do a little ceremony. I'm all about that because it teaches them to have that involvement, to know that everything that we have that we've become attached to is a sense of loss when it dies from our life. And it's giving them permission. See, that gives them permission
Yep.
right there. Include them if if a pet passes. Sweetie, how would you like to celebrate?
Mhm.
How would you like to plan for this? Let's do this together.
Yeah. I like that. Really do. I really, really do. And I think it's going to be very, very helpful for um because I think since Columbine, there's been so many school shootings and no, I don't think anybody would ever want that to be a normal fear or a normal thought or a constant conversation, but we're here now. So now we have to talk about it.
Well, not
Right?
only that, I think prepared. And you just talked about it.
Mhm.
They're going to think this is our family actually prepared for Columbine-like situations. Let's say we were in Walmart. We said to
Yeah.
our family, I said, if I ever say drop, you drop.
Mm.
We actually
Yes.
did this at home.
Mhm. Mhm.
We trained our kids to be aware of their environment and that
Right.
if I ever said drop, you drop down on your face. It
Mm.
doesn't matter where you are because that means and I said, and you get to cover by crawling as quick as you can.
Yes.
And I mean, we taught them how to get out of zip ties. We actually zip tied and showed them how to break out of them. Because
Mm.
why? Situations happen. I don't want my kids to be off guard on something when if I can help them prepare.
Yes,
And
yes,
they
yes.
and it's funny, my daughter, who's 27, was telling someone not
Mhm.
too long ago how we raised them, and he goes, "Did that cause trauma for you?" She said, "No, it was a normal part of our life." We talked
Mhm.
really openly and candidly about these, and she said, "So
Yep.
I've never had fear because I feel prepared as best I
Prepared.
can be."
Yes.
So I want parents
Exactly.
to know it's not about making your children, we did it in a lighthearted way, but and let me tell you, kids think it's amazing when they can get out of zip ties. Let me just tell you.
Mhm.
That's because
Right.
it's a game. It becomes a game, but they also understood the seriousness of it because we're
Yes.
living in a world where these situations are
Happen.
impacting our
Mhm.
communities and
Right.
impact us.
Yes, that makes a whole lot of sense. And should, your child find themselves in a situation or they hear about one, you know, something happening to a child, it's beautiful to be able to have those conversations and not think that just because you're not saying anything about it that it will never happen to them. Because that
Correct.
is another fantasy that unfortunately people live in. Moving on, the work that I do when it comes to my coaching and comparing my using my psychological knowledge as a former therapist, I like to grab everything that can help a client get through whatever their situation is. I use spirituality, I use astrology, human design, anything that I could grab that can help figure out who this person is, but also what is the drive, what is the motivation to keep you going after certain situations, right? But when before this podcast, of course, me and Marsha got to know each other, and one of the things that she said, it made me chuckle because she said, when she is grieving, do not come and quote scripture to her because that is the last thing somebody wants to hear when they're grieving, especially like on day of first time seeing them. You want to already dismiss it with scripture. Okay. So I want to let people in on this conversation about, using faith. Because you do have a Christian based perspective, Christian based nonprofit, Christian based practice when it comes to
Yes.
grief coaching. Like how do you navigate that area, but also, explain to people why you felt this way and why a lot of people probably have told you they felt that way when somebody came and just immediately started talking about scripture.
Well, and I think first of all, I want to say I do love the Lord and I have a very deep, abiding relationship with Jesus. And
Mhm.
I know his word and
Right.
I believe his word inherently. And I believe every promise is yes and amen to me. When I was grieving, I still knew the word, didn't discredit the word. I
Mhm.
didn't discredit his promise. But when you're asking me how I'm doing, and then you turn around and I said, today's a hard day. And then you say, well, at least we know he's in a better place.
Mm.
And as we know, the Lord will never leave or forsake you. And you quote a scripture to me, that doesn't sit well with my soul.
Mhm.
Because in that moment, what I needed for you to say is, I know, sweetie, and let me just be present with you in that pain right now. Do
Mhm.
not say anything else other than affirmation and validating because I know the rest of this. Now, I've had many people who have shared with me that are strong people of faith that
Mhm.
they too felt that platitude was a slap in the face.
Mhm.
It's not that they don't appreciate God's word, but there's a time and a place. And what I want to say for that, I had a sweet, sweet, precious friend. She would write me a card and she would put a scripture verse in it at the end. That scripture verse was for me to cling to. Big difference. It was
Mhm.
not a placation of just passing off my grief. And I hope your audience understands the difference. One
Mhm.
is she's acknowledging and I am thinking of you and I'm giving you this verse because I'm praying this over you. She wasn't saying this is going to take everything away. But what she's saying is this is a tool that you can have also to cling to in your pain. So we have to be careful when we're talking to people. It's really the talking, and I'm going to tell why people give those platitudes, because the person who is not grieving feels better giving the platitude because they don't know what else to say or what else to do. And that's where they need to learn to be quiet. They need
Yep.
to learn to understand what it means to validate someone's pain, validate someone and affirm them in that place instead of trying to make themselves comfortable. This isn't about the non griever's comfort. So, non grievers, you need to understand me. In that space, it's about the person grieving. If you're uncomfortable, then you need to get in a space yourself where you are comfortable that you can enter that griever space without a platitude, without giving them a lecture, without judgment, without giving them step 1 through 5 to do,
Yep.
because that's not what they need, honey. What they need is your presence. They need for you to hold that space for them. And for you to say, I can't even imagine this pain, but I want to be present with you.
Mm.
And I don't care what your experiences are. And that's what I tell I can't imagine your pain, but I
Either.
am here for you.
Right.
And again, we have to watch carefully what we say to people because what we say impacts them. And we want to be people that are helping to bring healing, ushering in the healing, not continuing to stack grief, because this is what my people grieving said. I feel like some of these people are making my grief more prolonged because now I'm grieving the fact that they can't be present. So, see, then there's an added on, which that's not the intention, and I know that. So we've really got to work together to know how to be present in that space. And people don't want you to acknowledge, and I hear it over and over again, if you see a strength in them when they're grieving, they don't really want you to say, wow, you're really strong. What you need to say is, I can tell you're being upheld. And I want you to know I'm going to continue to uphold you in any way I can. Why is that? Because I can tell you that person will tell you it's not me that's strong. They don't have that. They're really relying on other people, their support, their prayers, their being present for them. That's what's giving them strength. So we do want to be careful when we say comments to people, what is behind that comment, and that we're ushering life into their healing.
Right. Love it.
And
Love it. I love it.
we have to be careful too not to shut people down in their grief, because when you do, and when you were talking about that you felt
Mhm.
like you had to be strong, what happens is that grief's going to come out many years later
Yeah.
because we stopped it. Somebody
Mhm.
stopped it. Somebody
Mhm.
said something. Someone, you weren't being asked the questions, you weren't being encouraged, and you were
Mhm.
talking about the things you look at. We look at the Enneagram. We use the Enneagram when we're working
Mhm.
with couples, with families, so that
Mm.
they can understand the way
Yeah.
that they would have the propensity to grieve that may be different, so that they
Yeah.
can have the compassion for one another and hold
Mhm.
space for
Mhm.
each other.
Yes.
So we use that because our personalities are different and
Exactly.
they're going to express differently the way we grieve. So
Mhm.
one of the things that I loved, and I want to bring this up to your audience, there will be
Mhm.
new spaces that bring healing to the people that you know. So I
Yes.
loved going to the beach. The beach was
Mhm.
healing for me. It was, I can just think about it. Anyway, I love the beach because it just evokes just the healing for me.
Mm.
But the Lord told me to go dancing. And I
Mm.
started going dancing. And dancing actually improves one's depression. And they've done studies, and
Yep.
I didn't become depressed because, girl, I was going
Mhm.
dancing, and I went
Yes.
dancing with my son's friends. They took me
Mhm.
dancing with them. So
That's
and my
awesome.
husband and I would go dancing with them.
Mhm.
So in that season of life, I went dancing.
Yeah.
Now that may be odd to someone else, but that
Mhm.
was really bringing healing to me, and it was lifting my spirit, keeping me from going into a state of depression, which I didn't
Yes.
even realize that, but I found that out afterwards of just the percentage. I think it's like it improves, it's like 67% of people that have anxiety and depression. I'm like, well, thank you that, you know,
Mhm.
that was something that was healing for me.
Yes. I love it. I love that part about it. The healthy grieving versus the negative grieving, of course, which is to escape into, like addiction, overeating, cutting yourself off from everybody, not getting outside, trying not to talk about, like, acting like, okay, I'm just going to ignore it and throw myself into work and not address it. And like Marcia said, yes, it does show up other places when you don't handle it, right? Marcia, can you talk about some of the signs that, people can look for to see if their loved one is grieving in a healthy or unhealthy way?
Well, I think you just brought several of them up. First of all, we
Mhm.
encourage clean eating. I tell my
Mhm.
grievers, I need you to eat clean. Get away from the carbs and the sugar. Why? Because we would have a propensity to make ourselves feel better by
Mhm.
eating unhealthy things, which only really makes grief more toxic within our body. So, as someone who's on the outside, if you're preparing meals, prepare healthy meals for the people that are grieving. Take them healthy things and watch to see what's happening, the changes. If you start seeing a mode of I don't want to have anybody around, I don't want to talk to anybody, they're probably going into a state of depression. And
Mhm.
that's where we want to encourage, hey, I think we need to make a doctor's appointment. I'd love to go with you. Because at
Yes.
that point, they really need to start, if they're not willing to see a counselor and they haven't, by the
Mhm.
point they start getting depressed, they need to go see someone, a medical doctor, so that they can be diagnosed. They may need to have a little period of help and have some coaching and counseling through the
Yes.
process. So if you notice that they also isolate all of their friends, that's a
Mhm.
red flag.
Yeah.
If they're doing things in an extreme, if they start drinking, and I want
Mhm.
everybody to know, anyone who has come to me that said, I'm grieving, first of all, I say make sure and don't drink alcohol, because what happens when you're grieving and you drink
Mhm.
alcohol, it just intensifies
Mhm.
the sorrow and the pain. And that's because my grievers have told me this. And they told me, they said, and one even had it happen, and she went into an anxiety state. And I told her, I said, sweetie, you shouldn't be drinking because it's
Mhm.
going to exacerbate the grief. Because
Mhm.
see, what happens then is all the grief just comes pouring in.
Right.
Whereas when you're not, because when you are not drinking, you're dealing with grief a little bit at a time. You're doing it in bite sized chunks that your body, your mind, your brain, your spirit is able to.
Mhm.
But when you start a drug kind of opens the segue and it can bring in so much trauma into that space. So
Right.
someone may think they're drowning it out, it's only making it worse. So I think that the audience needs to look for signs that are red flags, and those are red flags. And then
Yeah.
you want to be able to be the encourager and just, in a loving way, before it gets to the point where they've gone down into that abyss.
Mhm.
And you'll see little signs along the way. And so if they're staying in a dark room, they're not getting outside, encourage people to get out and walk with you. Hey, let's
Yep.
get out and go for a walk. I'm going to come
Mhm.
by. We're going for, don't ask them, just say I'm coming by. Then go, hey, come on, we're just going to go for a walk. Let's go for a
Mhm.
walk. Or you can go to a mall and walk, but get them out. Once they start getting out, that's really helpful. But you can be the encourager for that. So I
Yes.
think you did a beautiful job of really addressing the red flags that we can
Yeah.
see coming.
Thank you. Yeah, that is, of course, the psychological background in me.
Mhm.
Um, but the spiritual part, I love how Marcia speaks and how you feel accepted by Marcia, right? You don't feel judged or like notice the language when she's talking about these red flags, right? It's not a shaming or a guilt-driven concept. She's just telling you, okay, if you drink, this is what's going to happen. If you overeat or go to the sugar, this is what you're gonna feel
Yeah.
like. The end. No, like, "Oh, you're a bad person now because
No.
you're this," or "You're weak because you're this, and you need to be strong." None of that, right? So I love that space, and that's what we talk about as, mental health professionals, those who are in the coaching field. When we talk about the space of no judgment, that's what we mean. We don't mean that we're not going to tell you the truth now.
Right.
But
That's right.
if you come to somebody for help and support, right, they have to tell you exactly what the dangers are should you decide to go down a certain route, which makes so much sense, right? So Marsha also has some daily tools and practices that has helped her clients. Marsha, share about the 5, 6, 7 breathing technique, step by step. I know our listeners are going to want to try this at home.
Well, first of all, what I want your listeners to do is to lay down because they get the best results from this because then they can feel it. And if they're looking down at their belly, they can see it. So
Mm,
when we are grieving, we are not breathing deeply and we're not receiving the oxygen that our body needs. That's why quite often in grief we feel confused, foggy, we're lightheaded and we just feel off balance. So what I tell my grievers to do is to lay down and to
mhm,
put their hand on their stomach. And as they inhale, they're going to inhale slowly, 5 breaths, but their stomach should be extending because they're breathing from their diaphragm and it should be going out. And as they keep breathing, it will also fill up in their lung capacity because you keep breathing till that whole, not just your gut area, but the whole lung capacity is filled in. Hold it for 6 seconds and then slowly release. And when they're releasing, I tell them to visualize all the pain, all the trauma, visualize the sorrow, visualize anger, anything that is present in that space to releasing it as you are exhaling. Then, when we inhale that next 5 breaths, we're inhaling the sustenance of life, the breath that sustains us and gives us life. And for me, because I'm a believer, I go, Jesus's breath is in me, filling me up.
mhm,
And then again, I'm holding and then I'm releasing and I'm letting go. And I'm going to let your audience know I did this quite often in my own grief journey throughout the day.
mm,
I had to
mm.
because I would catch myself not breathing deeply. So it's normal, but it's an exercise that really allows for us to get the toxins that are building up within our body cavity and in our lungs out of our body and restores us to the oxygen levels that we need to. So that's one that I absolutely love. And all my grievers that come back and do it go, wow, that made a big difference because they start feeling the oxygen in their brain again and they're not feeling as much of the fogginess and the lightheadedness.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. So you guys are going to want to play this back, cut this clip, and let Marsha walk you through this breathing exercise. Sometimes you do need something to remind you that you're still here, you still have life in you, right? Say what you need to say in order to ground yourself and support yourself. And like Marcia said, as many times, if you need it multiple times throughout the day, if it's after every time you talk to somebody, do it, okay? It is definitely, definitely going to help you have nothing to lose, but to just try, you know? Let's segue into the timing of grief, right? And yeah, this is our last topic, but a lot of people feel like grief has an expiration date, right? So Marcia, do you believe there's such a thing as too much grieving, and how do anniversaries or holidays reshape the process over time?
Great question. I believe that we can grieve with the spirit of grief, which absolutely can paralyze us. It makes us ineffective, incapable. We stop living. We stop functioning. We live in function. We no longer are living with purpose. We're no longer living in our created design because the spirit of grief has consumed us. And then I believe we grieve with the spirit of hope.
Yeah.
And so, grief, and I want to make this clear in and of itself, when we've lost someone, the loss of the person does not have an expiration, but the way I grieve will change in the way of its expression. So I think we need to change that verbiage because I am healed from the loss of my sons. Now, what does that mean? That means that I work with people all the time that have lost children, and it does not trigger me because I've been healed. I don't start crying. I don't start thinking of a memory. I don't get triggered because I don't have those triggers. And why is that? Because I've had the healing. I've allowed myself to heal.
Yep.
But does it mean that I don't miss? Absolutely not. We just celebrated our first son. His 33rd birthday was this past weekend. We celebrated as a family. So
Yeah.
does it reshape us? We plan things intentionally to celebrate our children on their birthdays and their homecoming days. And yes, we celebrate the day they went home. We celebrate because they are where they were created to be. So for us as a family, we talk among ourselves, what do we want to do this? So I think we can either have that rearrangement positively or negatively.
Mm.
And we have to choose, Latanya, as to whether we want it where there's life being produced or we
Yep.
want death in that place. So I want grievers to understand yes, you can be healed. Now, the God I believe in says that he came to set the captive free and he came to be close to the brokenhearted to heal them and to rebuild their ruins. And I would like to think that I'm a rebuilt ruin because that's what I live in. But will I always remember? Yes. Will I always have the place in my heart? And will there be moments I miss my children more than other times? Yes, but I miss them daily. But why am I not overwhelmed? Because I've incorporated them within me to move forward in all that I do. And I think for grievers to know that you can take those losses of those people that are important to you and you can incorporate them and they
Mhm.
can be part of you moving forward, just like your precious friend is
Yes.
incorporated in you. She still
Yes.
lives because of you. My
Yes.
children still live because they're embedded and a part of me.
Mhm.
And I think that's beautiful.
Yes.
I just think that's the beautiful fragrance when we experience that kind of loss in our life that
Mhm.
I'll always miss. You'll miss what you didn't have with your friend
Yep.
because she didn't get to stay, but
Mhm.
she is with you. And oh my goodness, so much a part of who you are. And
Right.
so I want grievers to know you too can incorporate your loved one as part of your journey so that you can live life abundantly
Mhm.
and experience the new things that are for you.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much, Marsha. That is a vital reminder because when I do my different studies in astrology, sometimes the people's charts will show that there's a constant transformation. When we bring in other cultures, right? There's some cultures that don't really look at death as a loss. They look at it as a transition.
Mm.
Right, and sometimes that even brings people peace, like, sometimes you have to reshape how you're looking at a traumatic situation in order to give it new meaning, right? In order to push through past it, because a lot of us who have lost somebody close to us or early or whatever the case may be, experience death in some type of way, may have, like, survivor's guilt, you know? Like, "Why am I still here? What is my purpose? And just like Marcia said, that part about they live on through you,
Mhm.
I know that's going to be helpful for people. The anniversary part, Marcia even spoke about this earlier, but that is always helpful. Keeping there, just because you heal from it, it doesn't mean that you're going to forget them or you need to forget them in order to heal. Like, you can celebrate those birthdays. I tell clients to go ahead because it's part of like certain cultures that I'm a part of or that I've studied or that I've worked with, where they would eat that person's favorite food on their birthday,
We do that.
right?
We
Every
go to a
single
restaurant
year.
for that. Yeah,
Yes,
we love that.
every,
But see,
right.
too, you have to find, even for holidays, we've foregone certain traditions and we've started new traditions.
Mhm.
You have to
Yeah.
find that balance that works for you, the
Mhm.
griever. And if
Yes.
people are telling you, first of all, it goes back to a conversation. If one
Mhm.
family really needs this and another family's going no, then you have to find the common
Mhm.
ground. You have to.
Yes.
If not, that's where relationships implode and there's a severing. And we're trying to bridge this together so everybody has the healing space they need and everybody comes out being healed in that space.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So if you know about it, especially if you know somebody who's lost someone and you've been in their life, and you care about them, go ahead and celebrate those
Yeah.
birthdays, right? Maybe send a text, "Hey, what was Johnny's favorite thing to eat or whatnot? Okay, we're gonna go eat that. I'm gonna bring that over."
Yep.
Like something to keep because Marcia says she loved that. She loved that when that happened, how, somebody even took her son's friends even took her dancing, right? These are ways that you can support somebody through grieving. And if you are grieving, this is how you can keep that memory alive and celebrate the life, right? Like, what if, we all signed this contract, this soul contract with our creator, and we knew what was going to happen, right? But if we knew that person only had a short time to be here, oh my gosh, if you're somebody has been through a lot of death, what if you thought of it as, wow, that person was going to be here long, but they want to make sure that they were in your life,
Yep.
right? Like that is beautiful. Finding new ways to look at your experience can really be helpful, really be healing, really can give you that motivation to keep going and allow that person to live on through you. And especially by getting support, from someone like Marsha and her organization, someone like me, a coach, getting support in some type of way. And I love that Marsha is a spiritual person. She's a Christian and she's not telling y'all to just pray it away. Right? Like that. I know that's a big because therapy and coaching and counseling is in some places still a big taboo when it comes to people who are religious and spiritual and things of that nature. And so what happens in this house stays in this house and just
Mm.
pray. You not praying hard enough. That's why you still feel that way. Like Marsha does not let you feel that way, right? And if you have hit a rough patch in your spiritual journey when it comes to this grief, at least maybe you can start to think of, okay, what if what's in that spiritual book, what's in that Bible, that Quran, or whatever you believe in is a history, right? But what should we be doing? We should be taking a baton and making it better, right? For our life, doing what we need for our life to pass the torch. It's supposed to be ever evolving, ever growing, ever being more, opening our eyes, right? So don't let old paradigms that don't fit anymore, right? Based off of you being truly honest about what you feel in your life, stop you from having access to resources with like-minded people who you feel safe with. Okay, no matter what they look like, what they believe in, if they have a space for you to heal, please, please, please make the most of that time and get the support that you need. Okay. So We're going to go ahead and close out this podcast for today. Marsha, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with?
Well, I do have a book, Gripping Grace in the Garden of Grief.
Yes.
It's called A
Mm-hmm.
Place for the Heart, that your listeners can get some of the conversations you and I've talked about today
Yes.
to be
Mm-hmm.
able to refer back to, because it's a lot of information, especially if someone's grieving and listening to this podcast, which I'm sure there are many. So I want them to know there are resources that they can have that they can use as a reference, and that I want them to know that healing is possible. And if they choose it, then they will get the healing they need.
Thank you so much, Marsha. Yes, and I will have the links. I'll have the links for the book and the nonprofit website within the description if you're looking, right? And just comment below. Let us know, if anything inspired you. Download the transcript, save the podcast, share this with somebody who, who struggles with grief or may not know like what to do with their loved one who is grieving, especially around this time. Now is the perfect time because the holidays are often the hardest for people who have lost somebody. So, Marsha, thank you for
Thank
joining me
you.
today and for sharing such practical wisdom to everyone listening. Grief is not about getting over it. It isn't. It's about
Mhm.
transforming through it, right?
Yeah.
Finding compassion for yourself and learning how to set healthy boundaries with others. And if you're navigating loss, grief triggers, or survivor's guilt, know that you're not alone. You'll find links to the book, like I said, and social media and things of that nature in the show notes. And if you'd like more support in your healing journey, I invite you to connect with me through my work as a spiritual psychological life coach, and where I integrate psychology and all the esoteric sciences and generational healing to help you transform grief into growth. And if you need special services, Marsha is also available, and I said the links will be listed below. So thank you for tuning in, everybody, to Live and Be Great. And until next time, take care of your heart and your spirit and allow yourself to live and be great.
Mm.
All right, go ahead and stop this recording.